Hey everyone, what's going on? It's Am I Missing Something? It's Matt.
And it's Zach.
So we're just going to hop right into it. If you haven't seen the first episode before for the return of the Bamboozle Festival, go listen to our opinions on Bamboozle, but holy shit, has it been an eventful day.
Yeah. So full disclosure, pretty much I'd say, about like 24 hours after we premiered that first episode where we reviewed just like everything that was leading up to Bamboozle's return. Little quick reminder, it was a big festival in New Jersey leading up and then, basically discontinued in 2012. Started to, tease that it was returning in 2023 and 2021. And in a nutshell, it's just a lot of misled marketing and a lot of kind of just skeevy kind of things and just not good interactions with customers and attendees. But literally, once we sent out that episode into the wild, I mean, the response that we got from
it's been insane
from people is just they were just saying how like finally someone's calling attention to this crap. But then it just got even more skeevy to the point that here we are a week from when Bamboozle was supposed to happen in Atlantic City, from May 5th to the 7th. A week from when it was supposed to happen, it gets canceled.
Just
how the hell did
canceled.
we get here? I know a lot of people were like, what the hell? Only a week before it was supposed to happen. I'm like, damn, I'm actually impressed they gave that long in advance.
I was expecting it to be almost like a cartoon situation. Like they sell these tickets, and then when you get to the field, like you see like napkins just tumbling across the field, and like there's no stage, there's nothing.
I mean, I figured it was going to happen come hell to high water, whether or not it was going to be what fans wanted. I thought maybe best case scenario, the Thursday before the festival started, there'd be a, hey, sorry, this is canceled. But the reason why I bring that up is that we were going to do some sort of like second part to cover everything that's led up to this point anyways. We just weren't expecting to do it before the festival got canceled. We were kind of like waiting to be like, because it's been so chaotic in that like, oh, when this festival actually happens, there's going to be so much dirt. Well, there's a lot of dirt, but it happened before it even got started.
Yup.
Where to begin with recapping everything? I think I do want to start, though, with stating something about the cancellation itself. Granted, right now, Bamboozle has been just very vague. I mean, they wiped all their socials, and there's literally no post other than the notice that it's been canceled. And John D'Esposito, the founder and organizer, who's usually outspoken, and we'll get into more about that in a minute, but he even just discontinued his socials. He's only made one brief statement saying that, low ticket sales and a lot of hurdles to get through is what canceled it.
Oh, shit. Why.
Well, yes, exactly. Because here's what really happened. Atlantic City issued a statement saying, we cannot provide the final permits needed. I'm paraphrasing, I should say. The final permits needed to run this festival after months of asking them for needed documents. This festival was announced in 2021. Granted, they didn't really confirm the location until 2022, but come on.
3 to 4 months easily in advance, you should get your permits done.
And again, we'll get into this a little bit more, but when it was revealed in an NJ.com story a few weeks ago that we're like, less than a month away from this festival supposed to be happening, and they still hadn't done any of the finished their permits, it's like, whoa. Before John D or the festival come out trying to say, no one really wanted to come to like trying to blame fan reaction and whatnot. No, they just did not do the permits correct. Like, it's just like baffling to me. Like, sure, it was clear that it was less people than they probably expected. Apparently, they went from in the very beginning going 50,000 people are going to come to 15,000 people are going to come. And even that was overselling it, because in that NJ.com article that I'm going to talk about more in a minute said, as of the beginning of April, only 6,000 tickets were sold, which is not good.
Well, he never announced headliners. I mean, that would have been a little bit of a bump to ticket sales.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Bamboozle's the headliner.
And how did that go?
So I just wanted to just state that real quick, because let's just make this clear. Bamboozle got canceled because the festival organizers did not get the business set up properly. They did not get the permits done correctly. It's just absurd that they didn't at this point. Absurd. Needed to say that out loud just to get that out of the air, and I'm sure you'll hear us say that again multiple times.
I'm surprised it got this far, because I don't know if you want to bring this up yet, but on that podcast that he did, this is a family business. Does your family know how to run a festival?
Apparently
if not, you shouldn't be doing it.
You know, and we definitely need to get into the famous John D podcast. But first, I do want to touch upon the moment that made us go, oh boy, we're going to need to do a follow-up episode. When we released that episode, we talked about how a big complaint that a lot of fans were having, forget even the lineup, forget even they false advertised the big names that they were going to get. The thing that they kept advertising throughout late 2022 and into even a little bit of early 2023 was that tickets were going to only increase. Buy your tickets before we announce a lineup because it's going to get even more expensive. Buy your tickets now while we just announced phase one because this is the cheapest they're going to be. Well, at the time of us releasing that first episode, they had announced that they were actually not going to increase ticket prices. But not only did they not do that, oh, it gets better. Shortly after us premiering that episode, a bunch of the bands slated to perform at Bamboozle started to do sponsored promotions on Facebook, on social media. Mind you, that is not unusual. Many times bands are paid in their contract to do promoted posts about how they are performing at this festival or that festival and whatnot. I get it. A lot of the big festivals do that. Here's where it gets skeevy. With these paid posts came a code that if you used said code would give you $100 off on tickets, or up to $100 off, I should say.
That's ridiculous.
So that means that people who actually paid for tickets during the early bird specials, during the Black Friday sales when they were told that was the cheapest, they actually paid more. They paid the premium price, not those who waited for the lineup. And turns out, no, we're not just crazy for thinking that. That was actually a big standing point when NJ.com or Star Ledger's business reporter actually did a report about this, noting how a lot of fans are complaining about Bamboozle. However, not just because of the lineup, and they go into a little bit of detail there, but they actually covered how they felt like this is consumer fraud. And they even had a specialist in that article, a professor from, I forget what university it was, who specializes in consumer affairs, even saying, yeah, this could actually be a case for consumer fraud. If someone was led to believe that they were paying the cheapest price for something at a certain point, only to find out it was less than that, that could be fraud.
What kind of kills me about this too, and I'm going to bring this up for a second time, and this is not as big as the NJ.com article, but on this podcast that we mentioned earlier, one of the other things that John D himself said that he was going to do, and this is probably the biggest kick in the teeth to people who are kind of in the know and kind of like big on Bamboozle, because there's always lots of talk, there's always chat rooms, there's always things going around, is that he said that because of all of the whining and the complaining that people are doing about Bamboozle and the tickets and the this and the that and the all the negative things that are being said about his festival to anybody, I forget if it was VIP tickets or like general tickets, they were going to give away.
They're giving upgrades away, literally. Yeah. So if you had a GA ticket, congratulations, you're going to get upgraded to VIP. You had a VIP ticket, guess what? You're being upgraded to Mega VIP. Remember how we were talking about that for $1,000 you can have Mega VIP for things that really are not worth $1,000?
Right. Now people are just going to get free upgrades. That's not, weird at all.
Not only is that weird, but it's also kind of frustrating because if I paid for VIP because I have a disability where I actually need more space or I need to ensure that I'm not stuck in the very back of a crowd, like I'm actually paying for these VIP services because I want to be able to enjoy the concert because without worrying about my disability. Well, now it's getting more crowded. Like we even talked about this in the last episode. Some of the festivals that me and my wife have been going to, we actually end up paying more for VIP, knowing that there'll be less lines for bathrooms, for food, and we won't have to fight for space in the VIP section to see our favorite bands. So now you're telling me a ton more people are getting into the VIP section? Are you kidding me? But you know what? You brought up the podcast.
Twice.
For those of you, well, let's actually get into that now. But first off, you're probably asking yourself, Zach, Matt, what podcast are you talking about? I only listen to Epic Footnote Productions on all the streaming platforms that you provide on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Epic Footnote.
And we
What are you
thank you.
talking about? And thank you so much for following us. And don't forget to follow us on TikTok. Anyway, what are you talking about this podcast? Well, Matt, do you want to explain a little bit about what John D., the brilliant marketer and festival organizer, did?
So he's got this podcast called Link's Special Guest, and you've probably seen it if you're in the know in Bamboozle. You've probably seen it on the poster, and essentially it's him promoting his special guest that's going to be at the show. And this podcast wasn't exactly about that. What it started out to be was essentially him trying to clear the air about what's happening with Bamboozle and about tickets and about the lineup and what Bamboozle was, because everybody's been talking the one way about Bamboozle, that it's supposed to be a return to Bamboozle form with the big artists and the big headliners and a show that you're not going to forget. Then it turned into, well, like we mentioned before, Bamboozle is the headliner. And then, the bands, we're going to introduce you to new bands and this, that, and the other thing. So he started out with good intentions, and the road to hell is paved with good intentions because it just goes downhill real fast, because he starts bashing on the people who are buying tickets to Bamboozle and complaining about the ticket price. And that's when he started to do the upgrades that we were just talking about. Then he starts to bash on everybody who's talking negative about the festival online, saying that if you don't want to come to the show, don't come to the show. Well, I guess more people listened to that podcast than I originally thought, because if only 6,000 tickets were sold, I guess a lot of people didn't want to go to the show.
I just want to party. I just want to party.
That's another thing.
Party. If
Okay.
if I heard him say, I just want to party, and literally talk about how his whole slogan for this festival is, hey, you want to party? I was going to puke. I was going to scream. Then go to Atlantic City, buy yourself a suite at Caesars, and have a midlife crisis like all the other midlife crisis douches do. Don't run a festival.
What Zach is alluding to is that he essentially said that, oh, Jersey people, they just want to party, and we're here to party. No, you're here to see bands, and yeah, you're going to have a good time. It's not necessarily about a party. Like, there's going to be people who get there, get bombed, drunk, and whatever. But for the prices that you're paying, I think you kind of want to see the show. So
I am surprised, though, when you talk about how it's about, because he kept going on like it was always about discovering the new artist. And one if he had a
I was getting to that. I was getting to that because that's my biggest thing. So I'll get to that in a second. But the party thing, he also talked about like taking out a billboard on one of the highways and saying, hey, you want a party? Come to Bamboozle. And if you've never heard of Bamboozle before, you're probably going to be like, what the hell is this billboard about? It's the weirdest conversation. And if you go to look for, and I'm going to say this, if you go to look for this podcast, you're not going to find the real audio to this podcast, because a lot of the stuff that he said in this podcast was so degradatious to certain people and to another Instagram account that we'll talk about in a second, that they took the audio down, edited it, and then he put it back up.
But once we put it up, we leave it up for the record.
Yes. But the biggest thing about that edit was he didn't take it down quite fast enough, because there's audio circulating around the internet of the original podcast. So you can still hear what he said originally.
Actually, what he really messed up by was letting it go on Spotify, Apple Music, and SoundCloud, where if you have an account, you can download content. That's where he messed up. So not only did he not do it fast enough, but he literally put it on platforms where once it's up, it's up.
Yeah, I don't think he knows how the internet works.
Of course
he doesn't. Really ever gone.
He just wants to party. He doesn't have time to learn how the internet works.
The biggest gripe that I have about the entirety of this podcast is how he said that Bamboozle was how you discovered artists and that we broke these bands like My Chemical Romance and Fall Out Boy and this person and that person. My gripe with this is you are a festival. You are a one time of the year festival. Granted, there might have been some shows on the East Coast and on the West Coast, but for the most part, you're a festival. Your festival's job is to bring the artists that are up and coming on the rise, to give them exposure. But if you're not running a tour like Knotfest or Ozfest or one of these big festivals that tours the world,
or Warped
Tour, you're not going to get that level of exposure. You're going to get local market exposure at best. Let's call a spade a spade. My issue is when these bands were first coming up, I worked for my college radio station, and it is one of the most renowned rock and metal radio stations in the country.
What station, Matt?
WSOU. It's 89.5 out of South Orange, New Jersey, and you can listen to it online.
Trust me, if you're on the East Coast, you've heard of this station. I even worked at a music marketing company, The Syndicate. There you go, Matt. Don't worry. I'm naming my past employers too. And, they for a while, I did PR, but they for a while also specialized in college radio. And trust me, WSOU was a big deal. Like that was almost bigger than even satellite. When we had working with bands, WSOU would be like, no, you need to make sure that they talk to WSOU. Lighting you up there, Matt.
Well, thank you. Like a lot of the major record companies, when they were putting out like these new artists or these heavier artists, they would come to our station because we were the only ones that were playing this type of music in the area. And you might be thinking, well, it's Seton Hall, it's a Catholic university. Yeah, well, let's not get into that. There was a whole thing back in the early 2000s about that, but we'll move on past that.
Google search songs that are banned from WSOU.
Yeah,
hoot.
That's a great list. This radio station broke. When I say broke, I literally mean they broke bands. Like when Fall Out Boy and My Chemical Romance were first coming up, they would be on rotate and repeat all the time because of the push that they were getting from the labels. And it was good music. It was underground. And My Chemical Romance was a Jersey band. That's one thing I never heard John D talk about ever, is that My Chemical Romance is a Jersey-based band. They played in New Jersey so many times, and he's claiming that he's the one that broke them. That is horseshit. He didn't break shit. He got the bands that were coming up, and because those bands were already on the rise and getting pushes from these independent underground stations, that's how they got their start. I'm sure they even played it vintage vinyl, and I'm sure if you listen to our Record Store Day episodes, you know that we loved going to vintage vinyl. They had live artists and acts, and they had these artists perform on their stage. So it's bullshit to think that this guy came along, runs a little festival, and that's it. And you say that you broke these bands. No, you didn't break them. You gave them a tiny bit more exposure like any good tour would. But you only gave them one show.
That wasn't even the boldest claim in regards to breaking an artist.
No, it's not. But this is the one that pisses me off.
To me, the one that made me go, "Are you kidding me?" was his claim about breaking Drake and how he actually introduced them to Live Nation. And then he was saying how Live Nation was like, "Who's Drake? You kidding me? Go." Ugh. Like that is the biggest BS claim ever, that you introduced Drake to Live Nation. Come on. Even by the time Drake was on Bamboozle, he was already getting established in hip hop. I'm not saying he was the biggest star in hip hop that he was at the time, but like to make that claim is such ridiculousness.
And also one more thing that I just want to talk about of how this radio station broke artists. I was the first person in the metro area to play Evanescence Bring Me to Life. They handed me a CD on a Saturday morning, and they said, "Hey, we just got this copy of this song. It sounds pretty good. Do you want to play it?" Sure. So I took it, played it, and I'm not saying I'm the one who broke them. I'm saying that this radio station acknowledged Evanescence before they were like on constant repeat everywhere in the early 2000s. I was literally handed the CD out of the mail. So That's all I'm going to say about this radio station and how important it was for the discovery of music. And no concert promoter who's running a festival one time a year is going to tell me that they fucking broke artists. That's bullshit.
But now, to give you an idea of how crazy this podcast that John D produced was, the biggest OMG kind of like crazy moment that came out of this,
if this all wasn't bad enough,
yeah, was when he addressed the criticism that fans are coming with. And this is where we're going to give a little shout out to our friend at Scamboozle. For those of you who are unaware, I think we mentioned him briefly in the first episode too, but at Scamboozle has done a phenomenal job at basically holding Bamboozle accountable and holding John D accountable on Instagram. And also he's on Facebook as well, but really the action's on Instagram, where he's just basically resharing posts and how, like, this is what they said and this is what hasn't been delivered, or, this artist has actually dropped off and yet Bamboozle said nothing. He's just been, had his eyes on what's been going on and making sure that everyone's aware of what's actually happening. And basically, as Scamboozle revealed, the man behind it, who's remaining anonymous, has been harassed by John D via DMs. John D is basically making threats of suing him, and he's gonna have a podcast coming out. It's gonna really make him look embarrassed, and it's gonna be bad, and he better hide. And basically making threats. And if you read the DMs, it's just like, oh my God, who is this man child? So then fast forward to the podcast. The man, John D, talks about Scamboozle, calls him by the wrong name, real name, gives a false address. He actually says an address and a fake name, going, this is their address. I'll give free tickets to anyone who goes and bullies them. Basically promoting bullying. That's the actual real reason why that episode got taken down.
Because that's real good.
That's one of the only. And when the Philadelphia Inquirer did a follow-up story to what NJ.com did, they actually interviewed John D. He was like, I was just being playful. Maybe I should apologize. Maybe I went a little too far.
Bullshit.
Yeah, he did go too far. And apparently the people who work for him agreed, because a little less than an hour after the episode premiered, as Matt mentioned, it got taken down. And 4 hours later, a re-edited version came up, and that was the piece that was missing. It's even more ironic when fast forward, I think at least a week or two, maybe 3 weeks later after that happened, one of the many questionable things that Bamboozle posted on social media was a post about a contest that they were hosting with an anti-cyberbullying company or a nonprofit organization.
Irony at its finest.
After already making bands pay to be part of the Break contest, going through multiple rounds of gigs at really just small venues and having to force friends to buy tickets to get them to actually be able to play Bamboozle, as if that wasn't bad enough. They then do a contest where, hey, donate for the chance to play Bamboozle. Basically an online auction to promote anti-cyberbullying, saying cyberbullying is horrible, it's terrible. And to raise funds for this nonprofit, we are giving people the chance to play Bamboozle. The highest bidder will get to be on stage during the weekend. And of course, everyone's like, are you kidding me? The biggest cyberbully, John D, is trying to do this crap? It's bad enough you're making musicians now pay to be on Bamboozle after you already made a bunch of musicians sell your tickets. Clearly, I'm not even going to mention their name because I'm sure they're embarrassed at this point to be involved, because it only took maybe 2 or 3 days for that post to suddenly disappear, because I think clearly that backfired. And even the nonprofit organization was like, oh, we did not know what we were getting ourselves into. We're going to pass on this, because that suddenly got scrubbed off.
Well, think about it this way, right? I'm going to take this from a different perspective. I'm going to take this from, and it is everything you just said, 100% legit, 100% awful. But from the other perspective, if I'm a band that busted my ass to sell tickets, to get on stage, to perform in a semi-legit Battle of the Bands contest, and then it turns into an online auction where essentially somebody who's always wanted to play an instrument has money and can buy a spot on Bamboozle now, and it's going underneath the same name. It's still going underneath the Break. How?
That's right. Yeah, it was. You're right. I forgot that it was still part of the same Break giveaway contest.
How is that a thing? If you're going to get up on stage with just your guitar and an amp, somebody could have made a complete mockery of this, and this asshole would have had to have acknowledged it. the sheer logistics of what this man was thinking when he put this together is, I'm gonna make the pun, is bamboozling. Like, how the hell do you go from kind of legit Battle of the Bands to I'm gonna auction off a spot for you to play on Bamboozle? This seems like it's like a very bad dark comedy. It gets more twisted as we go along. Like,
literally, like to me, that was just like the oh my god, what is going on?
I'm waiting
here?
for somebody to say that this was a social experiment and this thing wasn't actually happening. Unfortunately, people are getting swindled out of their money, which is not funny.
That's the problem too, because right now, and granted, we are recording this really shortly after it was announced that the festival is completely canceled. But right now, a lot of fans who specifically bought tickets through the BAM NFT or BAM ticketing platform that Bamboozle initially launched and touted as being the best and most authentic way to sell tickets.
Yeah, this is why you don't go with new things sometimes. And
well, we did a whole episode bashing Ticketmaster, but I hate to say it, there's a reason why they have a monopoly. Right now, a lot of fans are having an issue where if you go to bamboozlefest.com, it's, it says contact BAM ticketing. Well, when you go to BAM ticketing, they say, unless if you got it through a second company or whatever, or if you bought tickets directly through us, go to Bamboozle.
They were bought secondhand.
Yes, sorry, secondhand tickets. Thank you for clarifying. So now, fans, and I'm sorry to laugh, and I'm really sorry for those who are going through this right now. But now there is a group of fans who are literally being ping-ponged back and forth between Bamboozle and BAM ticketing.
Isn't it funny how they almost have the same name?
I actually
saying.
Well, that's funny you say that, because at first I'm like, wait, I thought Bamboozle like partnered with some third company and they created BAM ticketing. No, it's a separate company.
Like I said, it seems just like a very bad dark comedy.
That's all I can right now say in regards to that is, but let's get a little bit more into, in my mind, what broke the camel's back here. We talked about the NJ.com article. And I want to bring this up because I know that for those who didn't read it, the reporter did a phenomenal job. I say this because my wife was initially like, oh, there's no real juice. There's no new like juicy gossip details in it. I'm like, well, that's not really the point of this article. It's clear that the point of the article was to educate those who were not in the Bamboozle bubble, like Matt and I are, and a lot of the fans are. It's to educate the average consumer about, why are fans annoyed by this. And they did a great job at highlighting about the consumer fraud aspect. But there was two particular juicy details that at first don't seem all that big, but two details that I think really did end up helping make people go, oh, interesting. The first being that as of when that article was published, only 6,000 tickets had been sold, which is a far cry from the 50,000 that they were hoping for. And they noted how, that they were hopeful that 12,000 people were going to be attending, which is also kind of troubling because the press of Atlantic City, they did a story about Bamboozle being canceled today. And they actually talked to to a vendor who was coming from North Carolina. And he's like, I'm out of $10,000 right now. And I'm feeling even really weird because now they're saying right before the festival that 15,000 were expected, but I was told that 20 to 30,000 people were going to be coming to this festival, and that was going to get a lot of exposure. So even the 12 to 15,000, even that is a lot less than what a lot of the vendors apparently were being told. So that's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. But then what really was the moment that I think everyone went, oh, this is going to be a problem. This is no longer just us maybe being concerned that the festival is going to be, or us like jokingly saying that this festival might not happen to. Oh, no, there's an actual concern. They had stated for the first time it became public that Bamboozle hadn't finished filling out permits, that they hadn't finished submitting documents for final permits. And at the time, Atlantic City officials were like, yeah, we wish that they had done this sooner, but we're hopeful. We're hopeful. Hope ran out. On April 28th, 2023, the city of Atlantic City issued an official statement stating that we are not granting final permits because after months, they even made it clear that they've been asking for months now, not receiving documents requested, that their requests have gone basically ignored or that they haven't provided it in time. That alone, in the NJ.com article, the fact that they didn't have the permits after how long have they been doing this festival? How long have they known that it was going to be in Atlantic City? Is mind-boggling. Granted, it shouldn't be surprising when they were literally promoting that they were having job fairs to, try to hire security and staff for a festival that was happening a few weeks from when they were posting that. So maybe we shouldn't have been surprised.
That's also very concerning to me. So I'm gonna speak a little bit to the permit thing real quick. So, like I said, I work in a line of work where I deal with a lot of permitting, and just the fact that you took no clear alertness, for lack of a better way to say it, to getting these permits completed. Like there was no motivation to get these permits completed. And normally, like I said, a minimum of 3 to 4 months, maybe 6 to 8 months to be on the safe side. You should kind of lock down your permits and make sure that you're in order. Maybe a little bit closer depending on what the city wants. But they've run this festival before, or John Diaz run a festival before. We talked about the Rock Carnival, right? So he ran the Rock Carnival, and that was able to go off in Clark, New Jersey, which is a far cry from what Atlantic City is, and they were able to get the permits secured there, and they were able to have that show. Bamboozle, when it was the original Bamboozle, they ran it, they got the permits, they were able to have the show. How did you not know that this was a thing now? Just saying.
It's just suspicious. But as we've kind of said from the beginning, everything about what Bamboozle had been doing with the grand return of 2023 has been suspicious. Everything from day one, when they kept with the whole 10 days of Bamboozle announcements, of missing a day of announcing an artist, or making it sound like a puppet was a big draw as one of the announcements. So even more recently, so another thing that
I'm shaking my head and you can't see it.
One of the other scam-ish things that they were doing happened shortly after NJ.com. I think it was in response to the fact that it got leaked that only 6,000 people were coming. In random spots throughout New Jersey, like someone posted in the Bamboozle Facebook group, which shout out to our friends in the Bamboozle Festival 2023 Facebook group. Woo, we love you
guys.
Hi guys, thank you for listening. They had shared photos of them receiving these postcards that on one side had a QR code that if you scanned it, it would lead you to a site to claim free tickets for Friday of the festival. So we went from saving $100 off of tickets to you get one of the days for free now.
Because there was also a trash lineup on Friday, but that's just me.
That's taste. Let's give it that. But what's interesting is that so on one side was a QR code that led you to the site to reclaim a free ticket for Friday. On the other side was a bunch of highlighted bands and artists who were performing throughout the weekend. But what was awkward is that only 2 of the bands listed, I think it was Motionless in White and Joey Badass. I could be wrong about that. But they listed Limp Bizkit. They listed Say Anything. They listed Steve Aoki. They listed a bunch of bands that were playing throughout the weekend. But if you were to look at that postcard, you'd think, oh, wow, so I get free tickets to see all these bands on Friday. Nope, just 2 of them. So that's just false marketing. And apparently people were saying, yeah, I just saw they were handing this out at a club that I went to in Atlantic City, or it was being spread throughout. Even after 2 or 3 weeks after Boys Like Girls canceled their appearance, they were still using marketing collateral, both in social media posts, in actual printout posters that were being placed on malls across New Jersey with Boys Like Girls mentioned on it. They were still promoting artists that were not supposed to be there. Let me step back. It's actually amazing that Bamboozle even acknowledged the fact that Boys Like Girls weren't playing because, it took them a full 2 days to even do it. And it wasn't until Boys Like Girls actually did a post 2 days later finally saying, hey, sorry, we have to pull out. And then Bamboozle just reshared it. They've been misleading in regards to the lineup. Even, so sorry, Matt, but one final thing on the lineup part. We had just today a fan comment on our initial episode saying, oh, I'm actually bummed. I was really excited to see this artist in Black Bear. This is going to be my first festival. My dad got me tickets for this for my birthday. I'm just really excited. Oh, I'm bummed. And I actually responded going, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But I'm just curious, were you still planning to go to Bamboozle even though Black Bear had actually canceled their appearance like a few months ago? And she replied going, "Oh, I actually didn't even know that. I guess I did a bad job keeping track of what the festival was going on." I'm like, "Actually, no, that might not be on you." Like literally, they were so quiet about Black Bear suddenly dropping off. And going back to that podcast, John D brought it up, but instead of acknowledging the fact that Black Bear actually had canceled a bunch of dates because of mental health, let's chalk it up to that. John D was like, "Yeah, he was, this is the only thing he was going to be doing all year. And, Black Bear does what Black Bear does." I'm like, "You douche. You can't even show support for an artist who needed help." You made it sound like he was a dick instead of like saying, he needs to do what he needs to do. And, we were bummed. Forget the fact that you didn't even announce anything on social media. So no, I'm not surprised because they've just been mislead. Like that's what got us really into this topic, is that they've been misleading since day one.
So you make an interesting point there, and that kind of goes into what I wanted to talk about. So as I was scrolling through all of the news that was coming out today, one of the other posts that I saw that was very interesting. Did you happen to see Saves the Days post?
Yes, I did, but please go on.
Saves the Days official Instagram has a caption that says, "Good bands move to Philly." And it posts Saves the Day playing Can't Slow Down, Finch's playing What It Is to Burn in Valencia on May 7th at the Fillmore in Philadelphia. The caption underneath it says, and I quote, "We all got bamboozled and signed up for New Jersey's Fire Fest. Fest is canceled, but we're going to play a gig anyway. See you at the Fillmore in Philadelphia." So it makes me wonder, what were the artists' relations like throughout this entire process?
Probably not good.
Not good at all. Like, if he's hiding the fact that these bands canceled due to various reasons, but still was like kind of hush on taking them down and still promoting the show as it was going on, that's very misleading too. That's false advertising. And I would also think that would fall underneath the consumer fraud piece. I mean, there's just no words. And this also was the man who said in the podcast that he doesn't understand why people don't want to come to the show, why people are bad mouthing him. We're just trying to put on a show for you guys, and we're just trying to make a living here. Well, if you do shady shit like this, nobody's going to want to come to your show. Nobody's going to want to trust you. And that's why we're making a podcast like this, to let people know about assholes like you.
Or it's even more clear that as to why they were struggling to get even a lot of bands to play the festival in the first place. I mean, I think it comes down to a lot of people are asking, was there ever a festival to begin with? Was this all a big scam? Truth of the matter is, I'm sure there really was a festival, that the people behind Bamboozle really were planning to put on a festival called Bamboozle. The problem, I think, where it really came down to is clearly there were still a lot of fans who believed in the brand Bamboozle. It's clear that the brand Bamboozle didn't hold the same value with a lot of talent.
And that's a shame.
It is, but like the idea being that, like in Field of Dreams, like if you build it, they will come. Well, the fans came. Unfortunately, the bands did not.
Well, 6,000.
It's clear that
came.
Well, listen,
or wanted to come.
I mean, even if they got, I will say this in defense of Bamboozle in regards to the number of people coming. And we touched upon this a little bit in the first episode too, but it's worth repeating. Atlantic City is a hard market. I found it really funny that in the podcast, so they had a journalist from Asbury Park Press on it, and he was telling how, like at the end, it's like, the next hot spot for music in Jersey is going to be Atlantic City. And it's tough, and it's kind of laughable because the truth of the matter is it's hard to do music festivals in Atlantic City. I say that because I think of two examples, one recent and one over 10 years ago. The one over 10 years ago, Matt, if you recall, when Metallica hosted the Orion Festival.
Yep.
I got to go to it. It was a great festival. It was at the same place, Bader Field, that Bamboozle was supposed to happen. Great festival. Sound issues here and there, but again, fun festival. And while it ended up getting about 20,000 people, I know that it wasn't enough, at least, for them to justify hosting in Atlantic City again. They did it in Detroit the following year. And the truth of the matter is, everyone thinks, oh, Atlantic City. It's in a central location for pretty much all of the East Coast or all the Northeast. People can get to Philadelphia and then go over to Atlantic City. There's literally a crap ton of hotels. It makes sense. Well, here's the problem.
But
It's expensive to be in Atlantic City.
extremely.
It's not that close to Philadelphia as people think. It's about an hour, which in Jersey is actually, I mean, it's doable, but even in Jersey standards, it's like, yeah, I'm not really going out of my way for an hour. Not to bash Bamboozle, but especially for a festival that's not got a great lineup. And especially when it's summertime, and let's lump May in with summer. It's expensive to find a hotel. Even a really crappy motel is going to cost you a lot of money.
And when we say crappy motel, it really is like you either have the bottom choice of motels and they're not in great areas in Atlantic City, or you're paying premium top dollar for casino hotels. There's really no middle ground.
And the other problem is that it's not even that like Baderfield is that close to all these hotels. We ended up, when we went to Orion, having to walk like a good almost an hour actually from Baderfield to where we were actually in Atlantic City.
Did you just say you walked?
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
We were too tired to wait for an Uber. Not Uber. Uber wasn't really around then. I think
the old school Uber, a cab.
Cabs were not even. I think we were also even thinking, you know what? Let's just leave the car here so that the next day we get our parking spot and then we don't have to worry about cars from there. We walked after Metallica's set, a long ass walk, but it really isn't that close.
And you didn't get mugged.
Well, listen, that can be any city. Let's not, be too mean to Atlantic City. Let's not be too mean. But like, it's so, you got a venue that's actually not really that great location to all the hotels, and it's expensive. And that's even assuming you can find a hotel. Because guess what? As soon as it gets nice in May, hotels are gone because people just go to Atlantic City because of the nice weather and gambling and casinos. Which leads me to the second example, Adjacent Festival. The festival that I'm sure Bamboozle will love to put a lot of blame on, in that, they stole our thunder. They made everyone expect us to get bands like Blink-182 and Paramore, and they took it from like. The truth of the matter is that while I have no actual physical proof that Adjacent's not doing well, for a festival that has two of arguably the biggest draws in rock touring right now, Blink-182 and Paramore, it's a little surprising that they have to continuously do a lot of not just social media ads, but giveaways, special deals with no fees, purchases for this week. Like, they're still pushing sales hard for Adjacent Festival, a festival that I think is an amazing lineup. But here's the problem with that. Not only is it in Atlantic City and in the summer, it's during Memorial Day weekend. And both me and my wife even said, my God, if it was any other freaking weekend, we would have bought tickets for that in a heartbeat. But when you have a family and you need to consider who's going to watch the kids, it's going to be hard to do that during Memorial Day weekend.
Yep. And the traffic just to get down there.
Yeah. But and I say that's Memorial Day weekend, but the truth of the matter is, once it hits May, it gets busy in Atlantic City, especially on the weekends. So in Bamboozle's defense, now, I'm not saying that Atlantic City is a terrible market for concerts. I mean, it's great because it's actually kind of fun for a single night concert. Like, I actually have at least 2 planned this summer for a little night away with the wife. But for a full weekend of music, to do that in Atlantic City, you're asking a lot from consumers. And what's more, and this is where I also feel bad for certain people. Normally with hotels, you can, a lot of hotels come with free cancellations up to 48 hours before you're supposed to check in. There's a lot of people right now going, my hotel did not offer that. There is no refund being available to a lot of the hotels right now.
And some people were flying in too. Like, you're not going to be able to get reimbursed on that either.
Someone that commented on Facebook in the Bamboozle Fest 2023 group had noted how they were from the East Coast originally. They're out in Austin, and he was planning his bachelor party for Bamboozle. They had already bought tickets, flight tickets, hotels, Him and another friend were going to meet up with other friends who are East Coast based, all going to meet in Atlantic City and go to Bamboozle for his bachelor party. That's canceled now. I just put together a bachelor party for my cousin. And the amount of planning that goes into any, let alone one that involves a festival, is a lot. There's people who actually planned to attend the festival that they thought, or that was being marketed to them as something that's a return to what they remembered it being, coming from faraway places that are now kind of screwed. And from the looks of it so far, again, granted, it's still pretty fresh, the news that it's canceled. But, so far, the bands that have actually announced, hey, so we're going to do these shows now that, the festival is canceled, so far, it's been in Philadelphia, which that kind of sucks for people who are still going to go to Atlantic City hoping that, like, they can find something to do since they already have the hotel. Like, it's not that close. Atlantic City is not as close to Philadelphia as people might think. There's definitely some people who are already saying that they're going to try to like get in contact with the bands and try to do something for those who are going to still be in town. And I hope that still happens. But like, I definitely feel for people who made a lot of expensive travel plans. And you might go, oh, well, it's only 6,000 people. No, that's still a lot of people.
Yeah.
Still a lot of people who spent a lot of money on this.
That sells out a lot of hotels. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, hotels, Airbnbs, like, it's tough. I feel for them. And I also, I do also feel for the local businesses because they're definitely going to lose out on even those 6,000 people who are supposed to come in. And local businesses who are in near the hotels or even the hotels themselves who probably could have gotten even more money from them actually being in the hotel. I feel bad for the vendors who are now, like I mentioned that one from North Carolina, I think it was a cannabis company, who now are going to be out of $10,000, it sounds like. Vendors who are like banking on being exposed to a lot of new fans.
There's one other thing I want to say about the vendor situation, and I know we didn't talk about this a lot, but somebody brought it up, and I found it very interesting. They mentioned that there was only a taco truck that was mentioned.
So no, this was a different one. I actually was surprised when I did read the article because, to your point, yeah, they really on social media, the only vendor that they really promoted was the taco truck.
Yeah.
Which is also kind of weird.
Right. So how are you planning to feed people? And how are you planning to get people beverages? Like,
I mean, supposedly there was more vendors, but they did a shitty job promoting.
Yeah, there was none of that. So if there was a plan for it, well, we would never know.
And that was almost the first real like warning sign this past week that okay, something's up. To your point, that like we are a week away from when the festival, a little over a week from when the festival is supposed to happen, and not only has the festival not posted anything about set times, maps of the grounds, like what other vendors they can see, like suddenly it was just quiet during the week on the social media posts. They would maybe reshare some stories, but no new actual posts. So then suddenly on April 28th, 2023, everything was just gone. Every single past post, gone. Poof.
And to also talk about that a little bit more, and I find this very interesting. Once again, John D doesn't really understand how the internet works because his company, Link Star Entertainment, that also went black too. But I was curious. There's a website called archive.com or archive.org. Essentially, it's called the Wayback Machine. If you've never used it before, it's essentially a way for you to go back in time on the internet and look at websites for, when they were posted and when they had things. Like you could go back to eBay in the year 2000 and see what that looked like, or Blockbuster's website. It's a fun little nostalgia trip. But when you're looking for information, it's a great utility because I wanted to see what was on Linkstar's website prior to it going black, because now when you go to it, it just says Linkstar events and it's got a button where you can click on it and it's just the home page. There's no other pages. But essentially, before he had taken it down, it was the Bamboozle. They've got a bunch of other venues, I guess, that they dealt with. And then there was one other very interesting little piece of information that I don't know if we've ever brought up before. I've certainly never heard of it, but there's a rock festival that they ran last year, September 31st, to October 1st called the Orange Loop Rock Festival. And I know that it's the same company that runs it because all of the feel of the marketing that they did looks just like Bamboozle, just in black and orange. And they're not small name artists either. So this is another thing that's kind of interesting to me, that they changed the way that this whole thing works with Bamboozle. And it really makes you think, what are the artist relations like? Because some of the names, granted, they might not have the biggest reputation anymore, but there's still some pretty big names on here. Like they have the Stone Temple Pilots, Chevelle, Hoobastank, Puddle of Mud, Hinder, Trench of Naughty by Nature, John 5. So there's a lot of names on here. And then there's some cover bands and some lesser known bands on here. But just to think, if some of this stuff went on at that festival and nobody reported it and it was not known, I'm very curious why we didn't hear much about that. But Bamboozle is blown up.
Two things. Well, two questions. Was Living Color playing that festival too?
They're not on here. I don't see them.
Because the name sounds vaguely familiar. From what you were telling me, about the lineup. It almost feels like the Rock Carnival 3,
kind of,
with a new name.
But it's also in Atlantic City, and it's like
that was my next question. That was also in Atlantic City.
Yeah, it was in Atlantic City, and it was at the Showboat event grounds.
Yeah.
And actually, so here, I'll say this though. If you're listening to this and you hear of this festival, be careful, because it says see you in 2023.
Oh.
So be careful.
But what's also interesting is that, so this is not their first rodeo in Atlantic City.
Correct. They proved that it could be done if this one went off without a hitch.
So then how did they not know about the permits? So then what delayed that?
How did they not know anything?
Like that. It goes back to the big, what the heck? It goes back to the name of this series. Am I missing something? And you know what? I'm going to also say, for those who have been to, what's it called? Orange Loop, whatever. For those who have attended Orange Loop Festival, let us know. And actually, I know I usually plug, let us know on social media, but actually email us at epicfootnote@gmail.com. Let us know what your experience actually was like at Orange Loop. I'm curious before we go down that rabbit hole of that craziness. And you know what? Also email us your experience with Bamboozle, because I will say, Matt and I were really torn as to how we wanted to handle a follow-up episode. So whether you were a band that was participating in the break contest, whether you're a fan who actually did get in touch with John D and did get supposedly refunded by him, as he claimed to have done in NG.com article in the Philadelphia Inquirer, whether you're just a fan who feels that they got bamboozled, email us your experience of buying the tickets, with your interactions at the festival when you're trying to get information, with your participating in it. If you are a vendor, whether you were planning on being at Bamboozle or if you maybe were in negotiations and then something fell through, we actually want to know. Of course, you can tell us on social media at Epic Footnote on any channel that you can think of, but email us at epicfootnote@gmail.com as well. We want to hear from you.
Depending on what we do, maybe we use it in another episode. Maybe we get all of your stories together and we have another conversation, because let's face it, this is not just something small. Now, I was going to say, this is just something that's like, normally we talk about like pick 3 lists and we talk about like our reviews on albums, but this is affecting people's lives. This is affecting your hard-earned money, and money is hard to come by nowadays. Like everything's getting so expensive, and for somebody to potentially walk away with money, like I said, I was half expecting, people who bought tickets to show up to Bader Field and just seeing like napkins tumble across the field, and there's no Bamboozle. In one breath, it's funny, but in the other breath, it's like, no, I kind of expected something like that. And it's even sad to think that.
I think the one comfort that hopefully some fans will be able to take away from this is that the festival organizers will actually be held accountable, that they won't get away with putting on a half-assed festival for what they were charging. maybe there's still going to be a lot of questions unanswered. But I would hope that there's a little bit of comfort going, well, at least I didn't have to walk into potentially an unsafe environment or just just a disaster and really feel like I lost my money. At least maybe I can recoup something. And maybe, you know what? I will say this. For those who cannot get a refund on hotels, who are going to just, go, you know what, screw it. Let me just go to Atlantic City for the weekend, make a little getaway out of it. Have fun. I say this with I know we, joked a little bit about certain things of Atlantic City, and yeah, there's definitely some unsafe parts, but that's every city. Atlantic City can be fun.
Yes, it can.
There's a lot of great restaurants. Hopefully it's going to be nice weather. It's a fun Jersey Shore experience. Treat yourself to a little vacation. At least you don't have to feel like you wasted a day on a field, because it's not like it was a beach festival. It was a field festival.
Yeah.
So go to Atlantic City.
Enjoy the boardwalk.
Fun, enjoy the boardwalk. Maybe you'll even catch a show.
Or maybe you'll hit it big at a casino if you're old enough.
Hit big at a casino and earn all the money back that you lost. Or I'm sure. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if there's actually a concert happening in Atlantic City that you're gonna go, oh, I actually want to see that show, because they actually get a lot of good concerts that come through Atlantic City. Literally, the Hard Rock Hotel, they have huge names that come through. But there's a lot of cool bands that come through. At the very least, don't feel like, oh crap, I'm screwed with this expensive hotel. If you already got the plans, you know what? Go to Atlantic City, have fun. Again, if you can get a refund on your hotel, go for it. But for those who are stuck with expensive travel plans, I encourage you to try to make the best out of the situation. It's not all gloom. If anything, you probably end up saving yourself a lot of headache from having to go to an unorganized festival. Enjoy the weekend. And with that said, I know we talked about maybe doing a follow-up episode, but in the event that this is the final time we talk about Bamboozle, Matt, any final thoughts?
I think one of the things that I'm glad is out there now is, and not just from us, but from other outlets too, is that this guy and the way that he chose to run this festival and the way that his company handled this festival, I'm glad that it got shut down the way that it did. And I'm glad that nobody got, I say this because, I know people probably still are getting, scammed out of their money, but I'm glad nobody else could have gotten scammed out of their money between now and when the show was supposed to go off. I'm also glad that it got put out in the media, and I'm glad that larger outlets, I'd like to think that we have the biggest podcast on the planet, but, let's be real. We don't.
We're available on any channel you can imagine.
But I'm glad like NJ.com reported this. I'm glad that, the Star Ledger and the Inquirer, they've picked this up too. So I'm glad that he's being held accountable, and I'm thankful that there's other people that are out there that are talking about this along with us. And I'm glad that we're able to hopefully be some sort of information to you, and, that we can be a trusted source for you, because we're going to always try to do right by the fans. That's all that we're here to do, because we're fans at heart.
All I'll say is ditto. And on that note, thank you all for listening and for going through this crazy Bamboozle trip and journey. Hopefully we'll see you at a music festival that actually happens. See Here Now, plugging that, one of my favorite festivals. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting us. Thanks for those who listened to the first episode, for joining us in a dialogue about this as well, and really helping kind of confirm a theory that Matt and I had, and that you're like, yeah, there's something fishy here. Thanks for interacting with us, and we hope you join us for another episode, and that you keep interacting with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Epic Footnote. We hope you subscribe to our YouTube channel, also at Epic Footnote. Like, as I mentioned, you can listen to the first part of our Bamboozle investigation, as well as a ton of other episodes where we talk about pop punk, rock, other concert-related themes. And also thank you to Lucky 13 Beard Co.
Log on to lucky13beardco.com. And if you're looking for beer bombs or oils, this should be really your first and only stop. They've got so many amazing good scents. They've got so many amazing products that are going to make you feel awesome, and you're going to smell epic because we've got our own beard balm and oil with them. It's the Lemmy, in tribute to Lemmy from Motorhead, bourbon, tobacco, cola, and leather, all things that he was about. And we're going to give you 10% off of your entire order. Anything you put in your cart, doesn't have to be just our beard balm or oil. It could be anything that they've got on their shop. Put it in the cart. EFP10 at checkout. Lucky 13, the number beardco.com.
And I know that we talked about, how money is tight and, especially for those who bought tickets, how they might be still struggling to get refunds. But if you do want to support us, and we appreciate it so much, not only subscribe to our channels and like us, follow us on social media, but if you go to the Linktree page in our bios, you'll also find a link to our merch site where we're selling Epic Footnote t-shirts, coffee mugs, hats, hoodies. It's a great way to support us so we can keep doing these podcasts, but it's also a great way to help just spread the word. So that instead of having to say that mouthful of a name, Epic Footnote Productions, you can just show your friends that cool t-shirt and say, yeah, listen to these guys. Just throwing it out there, no pressure. Thanks so much again for listening, and we hope you join us for another episode real soon.
See you guys.